Beacon Press Audio presents Borderline, the Biography of a Personality Disorder by Alexander Kriss, Ph.D. This audiobook is narrated by Max Newland. Published by Beacon Press Audio, 2024. Introduction. Collective Psychosis. On April 26, 2022, clinical and forensic psychologist Shannon Curry took the stand at the Fairfax County Courthouse in Northern Virginia. She had been hired as an expert witness by the plaintiff, actor Johnny Depp, in a highly publicized defamation lawsuit he had brought against his ex-wife, actor Amber Heard. After the dissolution of their brief marriage, Heard had publicly accused Depp of physical and emotional abuse. Her statements, according to Depp, were untrue, the machinations of a vindictive ex with an unstable personality, and he contended that she had irreparably damaged his reputation and thus his future financial prospects. Curry testified that, after having evaluated Heard for 14 hours over the course of 2 days, she believed that the defendant met the criteria for borderline personality disorder, or BPD. The current edition of the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM, describes this disorder as a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and marked impulsivity that begins by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts. Would you agree that a disproportionate degree of women are tagged with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder? Heard's counsel asked Curry under cross-examination. "No, that's not quite right," Curry replied. 75%? The way you phrased it is not quite right. Tell me what's right. Okay, so there are more women who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder than men. It's more prevalent in women, Curry said. And trauma can cause borderline personality disorder, can't it? No. Never? Right now, we know that there are people who have borderline personality disorder who have sustained childhood trauma, Curry said. There are also people who have borderline personality disorder who have had no childhood trauma. So, like most personality disorders, and really like most mental health issues in general, there seems to be both a biological component. In this case, with borderline personality disorder, the research tends to support a genetic component and possibly a neurological component. And then there's also possibly an environmental component triggering those genetic markers. Through Curry's testimony, Depp's lawyers hoped to portray Heard as innately irrational, hysterical, as a person who sought to defame her ex-husband out of a predisposition to act crazy, rather than as a participant in a toxic dynamic for which Depp might also be held legally responsible. The jury's acceptance of this narrative was tangibly expressed a couple of months later when it determined that Heard owed Depp $15 million in compensatory and punitive damages, while Depp, whom Heard had countersued, owed Heard only $2 million in compensatory damages. Almost everything Curry said in her testimony was incorrect. Yet, while Heard's counsel pushed back some, no one was prepared to fully defy Curry's presumed authority regarding psychological illness, as the version of reality she presented was in full accordance with mainstream views on BPD. Never mind the questionable legitimacy of giving a personality disorder diagnosis to someone after having known her for only 2 days. Never mind Curry's dismissal of the rate of women versus men diagnosed with BPD, well documented in the DSM and elsewhere. Never mind that Curry had mistakenly used the term bipolar disorder when she meant BPD, betraying a common confusion among mental health providers that often leads to those diagnoses being conflated and misapplied. Never mind Curry's flagrant misrepresentation of scientific evidence. Contemporary research suggests that at most 40% of the variance in borderline cases can be attributed to biological factors, leaving 60% to the environment. Perhaps most of all, never mind Curry's unequivocal denial of the relationship between BPD and trauma. Given the media frenzy that had erupted around Depp v. Heard, even a conservative estimate would suggest that tens of millions of people heard that particular exchange spoken by a doctor under oath. And trauma can cause borderline personality disorder, can't it? No. When Depp v. Heard began, I had already been working on this book, an attempt to reconsider the chronically misunderstood and much maligned borderline for a couple of years. This book emerged on a scale more intimate than that very public trial's, with a comment made by a patient in my private psychotherapy practice, whom I refer to throughout this book as Anna. All of the patients I describe are based on real people, with identifying information removed or changed to protect their privacy. Everything I've read about what it means to be borderline describes people at their most extreme, Anna said. Why, she asked, were people with BPD never depicted in a state of change, of growth? Innumerable books and articles on other conditions found in the DSM, such as depression, anxiety, and explicitly trauma-based disorders, highlighted the process of healing and recovery. Did BPD's exclusion from this company mean the condition really could not be treated? This had not been Anna's or my experience of the disorder, even though, or perhaps because, my approach to working with her fell outside the present mainstream of psychology. I am a psychoanalytic psychologist. This means some things you might expect. I have a couch in my office and see some patients 3 or 4 times a week, and others you might not. I don't oblige anyone to lie down during sessions, and in fact I discourage many patients from doing so, especially those who I think would benefit from staying grounded in the reality of the session, in the back and forth of words and facial expressions. I don't tell patients what to call me. Most settle on Alex, though some stick with Dr. Kriss even after knowing me for months or years. Often this speaks to how a patient thinks of the power dynamic in our relationship. Are we equals on a first-name basis, or am I a doctor? Are they my client or my patient? I tend to use the terms interchangeably, though I prefer the latter for its association to someone in pain, seeking help. The former has always struck me as too sterile and businesslike to describe psychotherapy as I understand it. For me, the psychoanalytic approach is less about what I do as how I think. It means I believe in unconscious motivation, that there are parts of ourselves we cannot directly access that nevertheless influence our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It means I'm reluctant to take simple explanations of the human condition, even when delivered by figures of authority like Shannon Curry, at face value. Perhaps most of all, it has come to mean for me the belief in a fundamental truth. At our core, we are all psychotic. By psychotic, I do not mean inherently delusional. I mean that we all possess an internal world unbound by time, social rules, or logic. A place of raw emotion, with no names or borders, where emotion is the logic. We were all born screaming into this world without words or understanding. We have all known the abject terror of hunger and the enveloping satiety of feeding at the breast or bottle. We don't remember these first experiences of being human. Before we have the language to articulate the things that happen to us, we create very few memories at all. But they have been with us longer than anything else we might identify as ourselves. Psychosis only becomes a diagnosis when it appears at times or in places we deem unacceptable. Children are frequently psychotic, that is, immersed in their internal world, but in ways we expect and therefore see as appropriate. They talk to imaginary friends. They get confused about whether things on TV are real or make-believe. They become so overwhelmed with emotion that they throw themselves to the ground, kicking and screaming. Adults continue to make contact with their psychotic core from time to time. Dreams are the most ubiquitous example, a nightly experience that is still poorly understood by science, a space we briefly inhabit that is no space at all, a derivation of us that we cannot consciously influence, where events make the purest.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?